carbon molecules vibrate so violently that they spontaneously combust. And you have a ring of fire that will go all the way around the Earth at the time. And that's one of the problems with such a large crater. But if you read the text of the Bible and apply this model to it in science, it actually happened during the second event, when Earth was flooded. You wouldn't have that heat problem, because heat is water is a good, it's the absorber of heat.
Yeah, I get
and therefore, the only way that we can have an impact to create the moon, which they most certainly believe the moon came from the Earth. The Earth doesn't have, the moon doesn't have a core. It doesn't have a magnetic field, but yet the material on the moon is slightly magnetic. And there's found, even some of the samples found that there was iron ore there, rusty. Well, you can't have rust iron unless you have oxygen and water, and to better create the rust.
Yep.
So all of this is absent from the moon, but yet we have evidence that something had taken place. Well, it is required that when it was on the surface of the Earth, and because the moon was not created when the Earth was molten, that's why the moon does not have a core. So it has to be created when the Earth was solid, already in a non-molten state. And this impact explains it. You can't have a moon and still have life if it is impacted when Earth was still solid.
No.
And so there's a logic triangle. You can't have a large impact without a flood for life to exist. You can't have the moon to exist unless you have a large impact. So you have this logic triangle that one is pointing out to the other.
Now, can I drop in a couple of questions here? How did the moon form into a spheroid like it is? How did it become this round little planetoid thing? Well, it's a moon. It's not a planetoid. It's a moon. And approximately when did this happen, in your estimation, based on what you found?
A German scientist I don't have his name, but a German scientist had calculated that it would roughly take 300 to 400 years for the moon to coalesce into a body, a spherical shape. And as long as you have a large enough piece that has enough gravity is caused by the density of matter. And that would attract the other debris to it. And it would automatically start forming into a spherical shape. Now, if you look at those dark spots, you kind of call it the face of the moon. Those are great caverns. And they're as large as some of our states. And that's because there's missing debris to fill it in. That's thousands of times larger than our Grand Canyon. But that's only there because it's missing. It didn't have enough to fill it in.
And approximately when would this have happened?
This would have been around Noah's flood, which would have been 2,349 BC. Because the Chinese characters of their alphabet, there's one particular character that symbolizes a boat with 8, I think it's 8 people in it, and that's what one of the Chinese characters. Even the first known emperor of China became emperor because he was the first one to figure out how to drain the land. Now that's an interesting comment, that there was a problem with too much water and draining it. Like, it wasn't from rain, because that meant, if something had to come over his borders and fill in these voids, and he was able to figure out how to drain it. And he became emperor.
Mussolini got the trains to run on time, and look what happened with him. It's always something that you don't expect, you know what I mean?
So we have what this proves out, and this is not the only scientific report that I found. Okay, it's there's a scientific report that was developed by UL, a college that's local here. The astrophysicists, there was two of them. One was Matisse, and the other one was Whitmire. They did a study that showed 30 or 40 different comets, I believe, in their study, that the orbits of these comets were warped by unknown gravity that was on the edge of our solar system. And then that was confirmed by a secondary study, which was independent, by the UK. It pointed to the same area of space, Sagittarius. The Chinese, the data right now, if it's going to come back again around, it's going to come out of the constellation Sagittarius, and it's going to come from the ecliptic, which is on the planetary plane of Earth. And now, if we also take into account when we, one of the things that I came across accidentally was when I did the model and I picked a certain date and I reversed the model in time to 1992, where the Voyager and Pioneer probes were, that this is the same area of space that NASA placed the Voyager and Pioneer probes. Now, what are the odds of that? You can see in the center right here that green line that arcs across the center is the ecliptic. You have the Pioneer 11 here. At the bottom, you have the Pioneer 2, and they have another Voyager 1 at the top up here. They are triangulating to figure out the position. In 1992, that was about 8 years outside of our solar system. Now, what's interesting, the way this turned out, it's exact. If you look at the Pioneer and the Voyager probe right here, you see how I drew a circle using where planet is. They're exactly the same distance apart from the planet with the same angle. What are the odds of that? We have a real object that's entering our system, and that's why we're having all of these effects of earthquake. Now, from right here, this is 8 years out of our solar system. That meant it entered our solar system around year 2000. That would have been around on Neptune's orbit. And according to the software, using Kepler's law of the planetary motion, and we're going with an object same density as Earth, but much larger, between 6.5 to 7.5 times the diameter of Earth.
Yeah.
And we're allowing Kepler's law of the planetary motion, according to the model, and says from the edge of our universe it takes 16 years to reach us. Well, that's about 2016. So if you look at the escalation of earthquakes and volcanoes, the magnetic field of the Earth changing, the sun's activity, the heating up of planets, and it goes on and on, the birds and fish kills, the weird weather patterns. This is exactly what we would expect of an inbound planet. And we would see it more intense as it's getting closer. And that's exactly what we're seeing. The Bible actually says that it's similar to the pains of a woman giving birth. It will escalate in that manner.